What makes an Atlantic salmon fly in fresh water? It has always been a fascinating topic as to why salmon entering freshwater rivers to spawn and respawn will eat flies or lures when these fish are not in the river to feed. All Atlantic salmon feed largely on the nutrient-rich ocean feeding grounds near the Faroe Islands and Greenland, or en route. So what makes them eat flies or lures? My personal thoughts on this topic are varied, as there are many different types of salmon that salmon anglers have come across on Scottish rivers. The first type of salmon is most easily identified from a salmon that has recently run into the river and is still holding on to its ocean prey, or from longer resident salmon that are alert and in the right mental state to catch flies. Because these fish have not yet shut off their keen ocean hunting skills, or because something has triggered them into a reactive state of mind, they result in solid salmon fly investigations, which is always a sign that you have hooked up with one of these salmon. As a result, these fish are the simplest to catch. Once salmon have established themselves as resident fish in freshwater river habitats, it can become far more difficult to capture them. Due to the fact that salmon fishermen are on the river on most days of the week, these fish are accustomed to seeing flies and lures, which means that they are typically well educated. This daily assault can frequently take people entirely by surprise, which is why it is frequently necessary to employ a variety of strategies in order to push them to react. In warmer water conditions, when the salmon are deep in the pool, one strategy that is effective for catching salmon like this is to fish your fly right in between them with heavy sinkers and create an erratic fly movement. This is done in order to differentiate your fly from the boring, higher than normal swinging movements that the average fisherman makes. When you swim the fly in such a way that it is deep and erratic, you will frequently be able to convince a trout that would otherwise be indifferent to chew on it. There are also instances in which trout will only bite a fly when they are not interested in the fly. This is a form of territorial assault that is triggered when a fly swims too close to their holding place. This behavior originates from the earlier years that trout spend in the river, during which they grow extremely territorial and maintain a distance of approximately 1 yard from other trout. When resident trout play this game, you really need to reconsider the size of your trout flies and use little sharp hooks. This will allow the trout to hook itself when it bites the fly, and you will not feel the bite, nor will the bite grow like it would on a typical trout fly. It is possible for a salmon to bite or suckle a fly without the angler even being aware of what has occurred. I have witnessed this kind of behavior from my high bank observation sites with my Polaroids on numerous occasions over the years, and I have had the opportunity to provide the angler with precise instructions regarding when to tighten off. One of the most significant contributions to waste in the fishing industry is seen in the practice of trawling. When it comes to the protection of Alaska's fisheries, every fisherman, regardless of whether they fish for sport, subsistence, or commercial purposes, is responsible for shouldering their fair share of the conservation burden. When people think of fishing in Alaska, they frequently think of large fish that are abundant in terms of the variety of species that may be caught. Even if there are still some excellent fishing grounds in this great land, many veteran captains have fond memories of the days when there were large quantities of fish and any other type of fish you could possibly imagine. Despite the fact that some of the stories should be considered the same way as any other fish story, there appears to be a common thread in the fact that some of Alaska's iconic fish are obviously not as enormous or as prolific as they were 2 or 3 decades ago. These assertions of a smaller size and lower abundance are supported by data that is now available. It is not possible for anyone to reach a consensus on the factors that are driving these declines, and even when we do uncover solutions, it seems that additional questions are raised. Every time there is a deterioration in Mother Nature, there is almost never a case that can be considered definitive. There are nearly always several variables that contribute to the fall of a population, many of which are the result of factors that are beyond the control of humans. One would have to be living in a cave, in order to be oblivious to the fact that we are observing changes in climate, regardless of where one stands on the argument on climate change. This is a natural process that has been going through a series of changes ever since the beginning of time, and it has the potential to have a devastating impact on species that are confined to a specific environmental niche setting. The decline of king and chum salmon, which was noted before, as well as the catastrophic collapse of crab populations in the southern Bering Sea, have also been attributed to climate change. To what extent is that the single element that has contributed to their decline? This is not the case, but I do not believe that it has assisted in the stabilization of their populations or in the maintenance of their current levels of contact as humans. We have very little control over the climatic cycle and what it does or does not do, but we do have power over how we interact with the various species. Changes in our sustaining limits can be found by any fisherman whenever there is a change in the numbers of any species that we target, regardless of whether the numbers are increasing or decreasing. Even if it is actually impossible, sport anglers and people who rely on fishing for livelihood are suffering in this day and age, since the populations of many different species are decreasing. The responsibility of conservation appears to constantly rest on the shoulders of sporters whenever there is a drop in the population of a species. In spite of the fact that the fisherman who fishes for a pound of fish is a significant contributor to the economy of the state, it is quite improbable that their political contributions will be as valuable as their flesh. The process of cooking salmon, particularly with the skin still attached, can be a dangerous endeavor if it is not done frequently enough. It is simple to overcook this juicy fish, which can result in the fish being tough or dry, or in the skin becoming very unattractive, rather than ending up with the gorgeous, crispy skin that salmon is so well known for. However, it is possible to simply avoid the most typical mistakes that we all make when cooking salmon, and the first step in avoiding these problems is carefully slicing the salmon. For the salmon to be as crisp as possible, you should not begin by placing the skin side down. As a result of the fact that the salmon skin is where many of the beneficial oils are housed, understanding how to properly cook the salmon skin is essential in order to reap all of the benefits that come with doing so. In the same way that you want chicken, you want skin that is really crispy and tasty. Begin frying the salmon with the skin side down and continue cooking until it is golden brown, somewhat toasted, and crispy. After that, sear the salmon to finish cooking it, which will result in an excellent dining experience. If your fillet is skin on, you want the temperature to be high enough to crisp up the skin, but you don't want to see the white bleach that frequently pours out of the meat. This bleach is not harmful, but it is definitely not absorbing. The presence of protein that is pouring out is an indication that the temperature at which your fish is being cooked is too high, which also suggests that it may become dry. Maintain everything at a medium-low temperature, or even better, on the burner, and then transfer everything to a hot oven to complete cooking in an atmosphere that is more consistent and provides an even temperature. Because salmon is meat, you should make use of a meat thermometer to ensure that the interior of the fish is cooked to your liking. You should remove the fish from the oven around 5 degrees before it reaches the temperature you want it to be at, and then allow it to rest for 5 minutes before serving. This is because, much like meat, fish will have some cooked portions left over. Undertaking the Heimlich technique is the single most effective way to spoil an evening. It is possible for some fish to have little pin bones embedded in the flesh, which can be harmful, depending on the incision that you end up selecting. To your good fortune, they are not difficult to remove using tweezers or needle-nose pliers, and you can easily locate them by sliding your palm down the flesh side of the fillet in both directions to feel for them. It is usually a good idea to take this additional step for safety reasons. Nevertheless, if you do not have the time to pull the fish out, at the very least, you should tell your guests about the risk of bones when you serve it. In spite of the fact that it is a lighter dinner, this does not indicate that it does not require fat consumption. The use of fat not only elevates the flavor of the fish, but also prevents it from becoming trapped in the cooking equipment. Fish is often very delicate and, if you are not careful, it can quickly open up and cook if you expose it to heat. In order to prevent fish from absorbing a significant amount of the fat that you use to cook it, you should apply a layer of clear nail oil to the grill, or even to the cedar board. It will be easier to taste, and the fish will remain whole. There is a popular industrial fishing operation known as bottom trawling, which includes dragging heavy nets, massive metal gates, and chains across the seabed in order to collect fish. Despite the fact that previously conducted research has provided evidence of the direct effects that bottom trawling has on corals, sponges, fish, and other creatures, there has been a lack of comprehension regarding the worldwide effects that this technique has on the seabed up until this point. The initial estimation of the quantity of seabed that is resuspended or churned up by bottom trawling reveals that the volume of sediment is roughly equivalent to the quantity that is deposited on the continental shelves of the planet by rivers on an annual basis. It is vital to have a comprehensive understanding of the regional and global range of resuspended sediment in order to conduct an analysis of the environmental effects that bottom trawling has on shelf habitats, as well as the seafloor and surrounding open ocean ecosystems. Scientists have made a comparison between the natural causes of resuspension, such as waves and currents, and the resuspension that is generated by bottom trawling. Additionally, they have discovered novel means to view and access the seabed in order to document the consequences of bottom trawling. A conceptual drawing of bottom trawling from a fishing boat, depicting the net and metal plate being dragged over the seabed behind a boat that is moving through the water. Bottom trawling can have repercussions that are extremely distinct from one another on the many forms of sediment that are found on the bottom, such as sand, mud, or silt, each of which has a unique biological consequence. As a result of effectively plowing up the bottom, trawling result in the destruction of native seabed habitats. As a result of the destruction of their root systems or animal burrows, all of the plants and animals that dwell on the seabed are impacted, even those that are completely eradicated. The entire chemistry of the water is altered as a result of the resuspension of material on the seafloor. This includes the sedimentation and nutrient levels that are present in the sedimentation, reduced light levels in the ocean, and decreased photosynthesis in marine plants, which are the foundation of the food chain, can be caused by silt that has been resuspended. Sediment that has been resuspended is typically transported away by currents and is not incorporated into the ecosystem of the area. There are a number of ways in which sediment can be deposited along the continental shelf. In many instances, sediment can be permanently lost from the shelf and deposited in deeper water. The transformation of some areas of the seafloor from a soft mud state to a bare rock state can be fatal to species that are found in the sediment. Trawling has the potential to alter the physical environment of sand, mud, or rock, which can have a direct impact on the richness of species and the complexity of habitat areas. In order to prepare the salmon, pat the salmon fillets lightly with paper towels on both sides, and then place them on a baking sheet with a rim after they have been prepared. We recommend using 2 tablespoons of each, but you can adjust the amount to suit your needs depending on how much salmon you are using. Marinate for 10 to 15 minutes. Half minus 2 pounds of fish. The fish should be allowed to sit at room temperature for 10 to 15 minutes in order to eliminate any extra water and moisture.